"I'll save your company in exchange for milk for my baby brother," says the girl. The millionaire CEO laughs. Then she solves a $500 million problem. Before anything else, let's see how connected we really are. What's one thing you can see from your window right now? The gleaming headquarters of Goldstein Innovations had never looked so cold to 8-year-old Emma Johnson. The 50-story glass tower that once symbolized the pinnacle of American enterprise now loomed like a tombstone over downtown Chicago. Emma clutched her 3-week-old brother Liam closer to her chest as they passed through the revolving doors, his tiny face peaceful in sleep, unaware of their desperate situation. "It'll be okay, Liam," she whispered, adjusting the worn baby blanket around him. "Mummy just needs to pick up her things, then we'll go home." But home wasn't the same anymore. Not since Goldstein Innovations had laid off 3,000 employees last month, including her mother, Katherine Johnson. Not since the baby formula had run out yesterday, and the eviction notice had appeared on their door this morning. The security guard at the desk, Mr. Peterson, who had always given Emma peppermints on her occasional visits, barely glanced up from his computer. "Katherine Johnson," Emma said, standing on tiptoes to see over the counter. She used to work in financial analytics on floor 32. She forgot her family photo. Mr. Peterson's eyes softened when they landed on Liam. "Your mum already here, sweetheart?" Emma nodded, the lie sticking in her throat. Mum was actually at her 3rd job interview today. She'd been crying this morning, saying they had nothing left. Emma had never seen her mother cry before, not even when Dad left last year. "Go on up then," Mr. Peterson said, handing her a visitor badge. "But don't wander off, you hear?" The elevator ride was dizzying, numbers climbing higher as Emma's stomach twisted with anxiety. Floor 32 had once been Mom's proudest achievement, the executive level, where only the best analysts worked. Now it represented everything they'd lost. As the doors opened, chaos greeted her. People rushed about with boxes and papers. Phones rang unanswered. Through the glass walls of the conference room, Emma could see several men in expensive suits shouting at each other, their faces red with anger. She recognized one of them immediately, Richard Goldstein himself, the CEO whose face adorned magazine covers and television interviews. He looked different now, older, haggard, his signature confidence replaced by desperation. $500 million! He roared, slamming his fist on the table. "How does $500 million simply disappear from our accounts without anyone noticing?" Emma found herself drawn toward the conference room, Liam still sleeping soundly against her chest. The baby began to stir, making soft, whimpering sounds that would soon become hungry cries. "I need to find Mom's desk," she whispered to herself, trying to remember which direction it had been. But the floor plan had changed, workstations empty, personal items gone. She wandered past the conference room just as the door burst open. Richard Goldstein stormed out, nearly colliding with her. "What the—" he started, then stopped, looking down at the small girl with a baby in her arms. "Who are you? How did you get up here?" Before Emma could answer, Liam began to cry, a hungry, desperate wail that echoed through the now silent office floor. Everyone turned to stare. "I'm sorry," Emma said, trying to soothe her brother. "He's hungry, but we don't have any more formula. Mom said we can't afford it until she gets a new job." Richard's face changed, something unreadable passing over his features. "And who is your mother?" "Katherine Johnson. She worked in financial analytics until last month." A woman in a sharp business suit approached. "Katherine Johnson. She was one of our best analysts. Her models on the Asian market expansion were flawless." "Until we had to let her go," Richard said bitterly, "along with her entire department." Liam's cries grew more insistent. Emma bounced him gently, knowing it wouldn't help. "I'm sorry, Liam. I know you're hungry." Richard's eyes narrowed, looking at the visitor badge on Emma's chest. "How old are you?" "Oh, 8 3/4, Emma replied, lifting her chin. "And you brought a baby here by yourself?" Mom's at a job interview. I took the bus. It's only 6 stops. A murmur ran through the watching employees. Richard's expression darkened further, but before he could speak, a loud crash came from the conference room behind them. A man burst out, his face ashen. "The banks are calling in all our loans. We have 48 hours before they freeze every account." Richard's face went pale. "That's it then. 30 years building this company and it ends because of one financial miscalculation." Emma looked up at the giant whiteboard, visible through the conference room doors. It was covered with numbers, projections, arrows pointing in different directions. Something about it seemed wrong to her, the way the numbers flowed, the patterns they made. "Excuse me," she said, her voice small but clear, "but I think your numbers are backward." Richard looked down at her, annoyance flashing across his face. Then he laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Go home, little girl. This isn't a place for children." Liam's cries grew louder. Emma felt tears pricking her own eyes, but she stood her ground. "I can help," she said. "I can fix your numbers, but first my brother needs milk." Richard Goldstein, CEO of a dying empire worth billions, looked down at the determined 8-year-old girl and her hungry brother. And he laughed. "You?" Richard Goldstein's laughter echoed through the executive floor, drawing stares from the remaining employees. "An 8-year-old is going to solve our $500 million problem?" Emma felt her cheeks burn, but she didn't back down. Liam continued to cry against her chest, his tiny face reddening with hunger and frustration. "I'm good with numbers," she said firmly. "Mum always said so. She taught me about financial models when she worked from home." A woman stepped forward, Jennifer Hayes, according to her name badge. Her eyes were kind but tired, dark circles betraying sleepless nights. "Richard," she said quietly, "we have literally nothing to lose at this point." Richard ran a hand through his silver hair, looking around at the remnants of his once thriving company. 30 years of building an empire, now crumbling around him. He'd started in his garage with nothing but an idea and determination. Now, with all his expensive consultants and Ivy League executives, they were 48 hours from bankruptcy. "Fine," he said finally, the fight draining from his voice. "Jennifer, get the child's brother some formula. There must be something in the employee lounge." Jennifer nodded and gently took Liam from Emma's arms. "I have a 10-month-old at home. I know just what he needs." Emma watched anxiously as her brother was carried away, but something told her to trust Jennifer. She turned back to Richard. "Show me your numbers. All of them." Richard led her into the conference room, where 3 other executives sat surrounded by financial reports, projections, and laptop screens displaying cascading red figures. "Meet our new financial consultant, gentlemen," Richard said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Miss Emma Johnson," she supplied, climbing onto a chair to see the whiteboard better. The men exchanged looks, part amusement, part desperation. No one laughed. They were beyond that now. "Walk me through what happened," Emma said, her voice suddenly authoritative in a way that made even Richard blink in surprise. An older man, Marcus Thompson, Chief Financial Officer, cleared his throat. "We launched our new medical technology division last quarter. Initial projections were strong, but suddenly our accounts showed massive losses across all departments." "Even ones not connected to the new division?" Emma asked, studying the flowcharts. "That's the mystery," said another executive. "It's like money is vanishing from everywhere simultaneously." Emma walked up to the whiteboard, her small sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. She studied the complex financial diagrams that the best minds in corporate America had failed to decipher. "These arrows are pointing the wrong way," she said, pointing to a flowchart. "Money isn't leaving from these departments. It's being counted twice here, then disappearing here." She moved her finger across the board with surprising confidence, tracing the flow of capital through the corporate structure. "My mom explained double-entry bookkeeping to me. She said it's like balancing a seesaw, but your seesaw is counting some children twice and others not at all. The executives looked at each other. Marcus leaned forward, suddenly interested. What exactly do you see, young lady? Emma picked up a marker, then hesitated. May I? Richard nodded, beyond caring about protocol. Emma began circling specific sections of their diagrams, then drawing new arrows between previously unconnected points. Her strokes were childish but precise. You're counting the R&D expenses twice, once when they leave the main account, and again when they enter the subsidiary. But you're not tracking where they actually go after that. The room fell silent as Emma continued marking the board, connecting dots that had eluded teams of accountants and financial analysts. Jennifer returned with Liam, now contentedly sucking on a bottle. The mothers on the 15th floor had an emergency stash, she explained, handing the baby back to Emma. Emma held her brother with one arm while continuing to mark the board with the other. Who's Victor Morgan? She asked suddenly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. How do you know that name? Richard asked, his voice dangerously quiet. It's here in your spreadsheet headings. VM Holdings receives transfers from almost every department, but I don't see where that money goes afterward. Marcus quickly pulled up a database on his laptop. Victor Morgan is our main competitor. He shouldn't be receiving any transfers from us. Emma pointed to a series of numbers. According to this, he's received over $300 million in the past 6 months. Richard's face turned ashen. That's impossible. I would have noticed. Not if it was disguised as regular operating expenses, Emma interrupted, pointing to another column. See? Each transfer is labeled as a standard vendor payment, but they all ultimately route to the same account. The executives crowded around Marcus's laptop, verifying Emma's observations with growing alarm. She's right, Marcus whispered. How did we miss this? Because you weren't looking for it, Emma said simply, adjusting Liam in her arms. Mom always says people only see what they expect to see. Richard stared at the child before him, this 8-year-old girl who had just identified the financial hemorrhage that had eluded his entire corporate team. A mix of emotions crossed his face, disbelief, hope, and something like shame. How? He asked finally. How did you see what none of us could? Emma shrugged. I like patterns. Numbers make pictures in my head. These numbers made a funny picture, like water flowing uphill. That can't happen unless someone's pumping it there. But who would have the authority to authorize these transfers? Marcus asked, scrolling through the financial data Emma had highlighted. These require executive-level clearance. Emma adjusted Liam in her arms as he finished his bottle. The signatures all look the same. What do you mean, the same? Richard leaned closer to the screen. Real signatures are always a little different each time, Emma explained. My teacher showed us. Even when you try to sign exactly the same way, there are tiny differences. These are exactly the same. Every pixel. Richard's face darkened. Digital copies. Which means someone with access to the digital signature database, Marcus concluded. That's a very short list, Richard. The tension in the room thickened. Emma sensed the adults were reaching a conclusion they didn't want to face. We need to trace the money, she said, breaking their troubled silence. Mom says money always leaves footprints. Jennifer nodded, impressed by the child's insight. She's right. If we can follow the transfer chain beyond VM Holdings, we might find where the bulk of it ended up. Richard straightened, a new determination in his stance. Marcus, start emergency protocols to freeze all outgoing transfers. Jennifer, contact the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. He turned to Emma with newfound respect. Young lady, you may have just saved this company. Emma smiled, but her attention was drawn to Liam, who had fallen asleep after his meal. He needs to be burped, she said practically. Jennifer gently took the baby, expertly positioning him against her shoulder. "I've got him. You keep working your magic with those numbers." For the next hour, Emma guided the executives through the labyrinth of financial misdirection. Her childish hand circled suspicious transfers, drew connecting lines between seemingly unrelated accounts, and methodically unraveled the complex fraud that had nearly destroyed Goldstein Innovations. "Look at these companies," she said, pointing to a list of vendors receiving large payments. Medicron Technologies, Torn Richmog Ventures, Covitran Medical. The letters are all mixed up, but they spell Victor Morgan. Marcus stared at the screen. "Anagrams. They're all shell companies. And they've received another 200 million, Emma confirmed. That's 500 million total." The conference room door opened, and a striking woman in designer clothes entered. Her elegant appearance contrasted sharply with the crisis atmosphere. "Richard, darling, I've been calling you for hours," she said, her voice carrying cultured authority. "The club is expecting us for—" She stopped abruptly, noticing Emma with Liam now back in her arms. "What's going on? Who are these children?" "Eleanor," Richard said, his voice carefully neutral. "This is Emma Johnson and her brother Liam. Emma has just helped us uncover a rather significant problem." Eleanor Goldstein's perfectly made-up face betrayed nothing, but Emma noticed her manicured hands tighten slightly on her designer purse. "What kind of problem?" $500 million missing from our accounts," Richard said bluntly. "Transferred to Victor Morgan through shell companies." Emma watched Mrs. Goldstein closely. Something in the woman's expression flickered, too quickly for the adults to notice, but not too quick for Emma's observant eyes. "Victor Morgan?" Eleanor laughed lightly. "That's absurd." "Why would he—" "It's all documented," Marcus interrupted, gesturing to the screens. "This young lady spotted the pattern. The FBI is on their way." Eleanor's gaze shifted to Emma, and the coldness in her eyes made the child instinctively hold Liam closer. "A child? You're basing serious allegations on the imagination of a child." Eleanor's laugh held a brittle edge. "Richard, this is beneath you." "The evidence speaks for itself, Eleanor," Richard replied, "and Emma has demonstrated a remarkable talent for pattern recognition." Eleanor's perfectly composed facade showed the smallest crack. "Well, I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding. These financial matters are so complex." She glanced at her diamond watch. "I have my charity luncheon. We can discuss this later." As she turned to leave, Emma spoke up. "Mrs. Goldstein, why did you access the signature database at 2:17 a.m. on April 3rd? The room went completely still. Eleanor froze, her back to the group. "What did you say?" she asked without turning. "The system logs show your credentials were used to access the digital signature database at 2:17 a.m. on a Sunday," Emma said, pointing to the computer screen where she'd pulled up the information. "That's when the first copied signatures appeared." Eleanor turned slowly, her composure intact, but her eyes now openly hostile. "You've given a child access to secure company records? This is completely inappropriate, Richard." Before Richard could respond, the conference room doors opened again. Two serious-looking men in dark suits entered, flanked by security. "FBI," the taller one announced, showing his credentials. "I'm Agent Davis. We received a report of financial fraud." "Perfect timing," Richard said grimly. "We were just discussing that with my wife." Eleanor's perfectly maintained smile didn't reach her eyes. "This is ridiculous. I have a luncheon to attend." "I'm afraid that will have to wait, Mrs. Goldstein," Agent Davis said firmly. "We have some questions about your relationship with Victor Morgan." Emma watched as Eleanor's sophisticated mask slipped, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. In that moment, the 8-year-old understood what the adults were just beginning to grasp. Eleanor Goldstein had betrayed her husband, the company, and everyone who worked there. "Mom always said numbers don't lie," Emma whispered to Liam. "Even when people do." "Oh," The next few hours passed in a blur of federal agents, financial forensics, and formal statements. Emma remained in the conference room, alternating between caring for Liam and helping the FBI agents understand the complex trail of fraudulent transactions she had uncovered. "You're quite extraordinary," Agent Davis told her during a quiet moment. "I've been investigating financial crimes for 15 years, and I've never seen patterns identified this way." Emma shrugged. "It's like connecting stars to see the constellation. The picture was always there." Richard, who had been speaking with other agents across the room, approached them. His face showed the strain of a man whose personal and professional life had simultaneously imploded, but there was also relief and determination. "Emma," he said, kneeling to her level, "I owe you more than I can ever repay. Your mother raised a remarkable young lady." "Is my mom in trouble?" Emma asked, suddenly worried. "For me being here?" Richard shook his head. "No, sweetheart. In fact, I've just spoken with her on the phone. She's on her way here now." Relief flooded Emma's face. "Can you give her job back? She cries at night when she thinks I'm sleeping. She's worried about Liam's formula and our apartment." Something shifted in Richard's expression, a powerful CEO confronted with the human cost of corporate decisions. "Your mother will have her job back with a promotion," he promised, "and neither you nor Liam will ever have to worry about milk or a home again." Katherine Johnson arrived at Goldstein Innovations exactly 47 minutes after receiving the call from Richard Goldstein himself. Her business suit was slightly wrinkled from her third job interview of the day, and confusion mingled with concern on her face as security escorted her to the 32nd floor. When the elevator doors opened, she rushed out, scanning the busy floor for her children. "Emma? Liam? Mom!" Emma's voice came from the conference room. Catherine hurried toward it, her anxiety transforming to astonishment as she took in the scene. Her 8-year-old daughter sat in an executive chair with Liam sleeping peacefully in her arms, surrounded by FBI agents, company executives, and complex financial displays showing her daughter's work. "Emma!" Catherine rushed to her children, checking them both with quick, worried eyes. "What's happening? How did you get here?" "I took the bus," Emma explained matter-of-factly. "Liam was out of formula, and I remembered you said your old company had a mother's room with emergency supplies." Catherine looked from her daughter to Richard Goldstein, who was watching the reunion with an unreadable expression. "Mr. Goldstein," she acknowledged stiffly, "I don't understand." "Your daughter," Richard said, "has uncovered a $500 million embezzlement scheme that nearly destroyed this company. A scheme that, it appears, was orchestrated by my wife in collusion with Victor Morgan." Catherine's eyes widened. "Eleanor? But she and I were roommates in college. She recommended me for this position, which may explain why you were one of the first to be let go when the financial crisis hit," Jennifer Hayes interjected. "You were getting too close to the irregularities in the accounts." Catherine looked at Emma with a mixture of pride and disbelief. "You found all this?" Emma nodded. "I used the pattern-matching techniques you taught me, Mom. The ones you said helped you spot market trends." Catherine turned to the financial displays, her trained analyst's eye quickly absorbing the data Emma had highlighted. "This is remarkable." "Mrs. Johnson," Richard said formally, "I want to offer you your position back, effective immediately, with a substantial promotion to head of financial analytics." Catherine blinked, caught off guard. I've also authorized a signing bonus that should cover any immediate financial concerns," Richard continued, "and our HR department is arranging temporary housing until you can find suitable permanent accommodations." Emma watched her mother's face carefully. She recognized the pride battling with caution in Catherine's eyes. "That's very generous," Catherine said carefully, "but I wouldn't want special treatment because of my daughter's involvement." "This isn't charity, Mrs. Johnson," Richard assured her. "It's recognition of the talent this company lost through my poor judgment. Your personnel file shows you flagged similar inconsistencies 6 months ago, but your concerns were dismissed." His expression darkened. "By my wife, as it turns out." Agent Davis approached with a tablet. "Mrs. Johnson, we'd like to ask you a few questions about your work here, particularly regarding any unusual financial patterns you may have noticed before your termination." As Catherine spoke with the FBI agents, Emma rocked Liam gently. The baby had slept through most of the excitement, waking only for feedings that Jennifer had thoughtfully arranged from the company's mother's room supplies. "You've had quite a day," Jennifer said, sitting beside Emma. "Are you tired?" Emma shook her head. "I'm okay, but Liam will need another bottle soon." Jennifer smiled at the child's practicality. "You're very responsible for someone so young." "Mum needs help since Dad left," Emma explained simply. "He decided he didn't want a family anymore, especially not a new baby." Jennifer's expression softened with compassion. "That must have been hard." "Nope. Mum says some people aren't brave enough for the important things," Emma replied, her voice carrying a wisdom beyond her years. "But we're brave enough for each other." Across the room, Eleanor Goldstein was being escorted out by federal agents. Her elegant composure had cracked, revealing flashes of the anger and bitterness beneath. "This isn't over, Richard," she said as she passed her husband. "Victor has contingencies for everything." Richard watched her go, 30 years of marriage ending in betrayal and fraud. "I believe we've identified all your contingencies, Eleanor." Emma saw to that. Eleanor's gaze fell on Emma, and the hatred in her eyes made Jennifer instinctively move to shield the child. "A lucky guess from a precocious brat," Eleanor spat. "You're ruining everything because of a child's imagination." "The evidence speaks for itself," Richard replied coldly. "Take her away." As the agents led Eleanor to the elevator, Emma called out, "Mrs. Goldstein!" Eleanor paused, looking back with undisguised contempt. "Your secret companies all use the same letters as Mr. Morgan's name," Emma said. "That was careless." For a moment, genuine surprise flashed across Eleanor's face, quickly replaced by fury as she realized a child had indeed exposed her sophisticated scheme. The elevator doors closed on her speechless outrage. Richard turned to Catherine, who had finished her preliminary interview with the FBI. "Mrs. Johnson, I owe your daughter an immeasurable debt. She has quite literally saved this company." Catherine placed a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. "Emma has always had a special way with numbers and patterns. Her teachers say they've never seen anything like it." "I believe it," Richard said sincerely. "Which is why, in addition to your reinstatement, I'd like to offer Emma a special position as a consultant to our new financial intelligence division, with appropriate compensation directed to her education fund, of course." Catherine looked startled. "She's 8 years old, Mr. Goldstein." "Age is just a number," Emma piped up, making the adult smile despite the serious situation. "Indeed it is," Richard agreed, "and sometimes the youngest eyes see what the rest of us miss." As they discussed the details, Agent Davis returned with troubling news. "We've located most of the missing funds," he reported, "but there's a complication. Victor Morgan appears to have been tipped off. He emptied his primary accounts an hour ago and hasn't been found at any of his known locations." Richard's expression darkened. Eleanor must have warned him somehow. "We're implementing all appropriate security measures," Agent Davis assured them. "But until Morgan is in custody, everyone involved in uncovering this fraud should exercise caution." Catherine instinctively pulled Emma closer. "Are you saying my children could be in danger?" It's just a precaution," Agent Davis said diplomatically, but his eyes conveyed greater concern. Richard immediately stepped in. "I've already arranged for security details for key personnel. That includes you and your family, Mrs. Johnson, and the temporary housing I mentioned is in this building's secure residential section." The following morning, Catherine Johnson settled into her new office, a spacious corner suite on the 44th floor with sweeping views of Lake Michigan. At Richard's insistence, an adjoining room had been quickly converted into a comfortable space for Emma and Liam, complete with a crib, children's books, and a small desk where Emma could work on her consulting projects. "This is bigger than our whole apartment," Emma marveled, exploring the space while Catherine fed Liam his morning bottle. Catherine smiled, though her eyes reflected disbelief at how dramatically their circumstances had changed in just 24 hours. Yesterday morning, they'd faced eviction and empty cupboards. Today, she had not only regained her job, but been promoted to an executive position with a salary that would solve their financial worries for good. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Jennifer Hayes entered, carrying a stack of folders. "The press is having a field day," she announced, setting the folders on Catherine's desk. "The story broke this morning. Child genius saves billion-dollar company. Richard is holding them off for now, but they're clamoring for interviews." Catherine's protective instincts flared. "Absolutely not. Emma is 8 years old. She's not doing press interviews." Jennifer nodded. "Richard feels the same way. He's issued a statement confirming the fraud's discovery, but keeping Emma's involvement anonymous." Emma looked up from the children's tablet Richard had given her. "Is Mrs. Goldstein going to jail?" The adults exchanged glances. "That's for the courts to decide," Catherine said carefully. "But what she and Mr. Morgan did was very serious. The FBI has frozen all the accounts Emma identified," Jennifer added. "They've already recovered about $350 million. The rest was spent or moved offshore." Catherine sighed, turning to the financial reports Jennifer had brought. "How bad is the damage to the company?" "Better than expected now that we've recovered most of the stolen funds, but there's still the matter of investor confidence. The stock is down 30% since the news broke." Emma, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "You need to show them you're stronger now, not weaker." Both women turned to her. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Catherine asked. Emma set down her tablet and approached the desk with the seriousness of a miniature executive. "When Billy Thomas stole my lunch money last year, the other kids were scared he'd take theirs too. But when I stood up to him and got my money back, they weren't scared anymore. They saw he wasn't as strong as they thought." Jennifer smiled at the child's simple wisdom. "Out of the mouths of babes." "She's right," Catherine realized, turning to the stock reports with fresh eyes. "This isn't just about recovering the money. It's about showing the world that Goldstein Innovations is more resilient and vigilant than before." A new voice joined the conversation. "Exactly what I was thinking." Richard Goldstein stood in the doorway, looking more rested than he had the previous day. The shock of his wife's betrayal still shadowed his eyes, but his posture had regained some of its characteristic confidence. "Good morning, Mr. Goldstein." Emma greeted him formally, drawing a smile from the CEO. "Good morning, Miss Johnson. I trust your accommodations are satisfactory." Emma nodded solemnly. "The crib for Liam is perfect. And Mom says we can stay in our apartment now instead of moving to the shelter." Richard's smile faltered. "Shelter? Catherine, were things that dire?" Catherine's cheeks colored slightly. "The rental market in Chicago is challenging for a single mother with no income." Richard's expression grew serious. "I had no idea. The layoffs were handled by HR and Eleanor." He faltered slightly on his wife's name. "I should have paid more attention to the human cost." An uncomfortable silence fell, broken by Liam's happy gurgle as he finished his bottle. Catherine lifted him to her shoulder, patting his back gently. "What brings you here this morning, Richard?" she asked, changing the subject. Richard straightened, businessman once more. "Two things. First, the board has called an emergency meeting for this afternoon. They want to meet our secret weapon." He nodded toward Emma. Catherine shook her head firmly. Emma is not a sideshow attraction. Of course not, Richard agreed quickly. But her insights could be valuable. The board needs to understand how the fraud was missed and how we can prevent similar situations in the future. I don't mind, Emma offered. I like explaining things. Catherine hesitated, maternal protection warring with pride in her daughter's abilities. We'll discuss it later, she said finally. You mentioned 2 things? Richard nodded, his expression darkening. The second is more troubling. We've discovered that Victor Morgan's reach extended further than we initially thought. Some of his associates are displeased about the recovery of the funds. What kind of associates? Catherine asked, instinctively pulling Liam closer. The kind who don't limit themselves to white-collar crime, Richard said grimly. The FBI has advised us to implement additional security measures until all participants in the scheme are in custody. Catherine's face paled. Are you saying we could be in danger? My children could be in danger? It's just a precaution, Richard assured her, though his eyes betrayed his concern. I've arranged for security details for key personnel involved in uncovering the fraud. That includes you and your family. Emma watched this exchange with the quiet intensity that had become her hallmark. Like bodyguards? She asked. Richard nodded. Professional security specialists. They'll be very discreet. The boardroom of Goldstein Innovations occupied the entire top floor of the building, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a 360-degree view of Chicago's magnificent skyline. 12 men and women, among the most powerful business leaders in the country, sat around a massive table of polished walnut, their expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity, as Katherine Johnson entered with Emma beside her. Richard Goldstein rose to greet them, his authoritative presence commanding immediate attention despite the personal and professional upheaval of the past 48 hours. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I present Katherine Johnson, our new head of financial intelligence, and her daughter Emma Johnson. Emma felt 12 pairs of eyes studying her intently. She straightened her shoulders and met their gazes directly, refusing to be intimidated by their power or position. Is this some kind of joke, Richard? Asked an older man at the far end of the table. You've called an emergency board meeting to introduce a child. This child, Walter, Richard replied evenly, uncovered a $500 million fraud that our entire financial team missed. She identified the specific methods used to conceal the embezzlement and traced the money to its destinations. I believe that warrants the board's attention. Walter harumphed skeptically, but fell silent. A woman with steel-grey hair and piercing eyes leaned forward. How old are you, young lady? She asked Emma directly. 8 3/4, Emma answered confidently. 9 in October. And how exactly did you discover this fraud that eluded our highly paid financial analysts? The woman continued. Emma looked to her mother, who nodded encouragingly. I noticed the numbers didn't make pictures the way they should, Emma explained. Financial data has patterns, like connect the dots puzzles. When the dots connect wrong, someone's changing the picture. The board members exchanged glances, some bemused, others intrigued. Show them, Emma, Catherine suggested gently. Emma approached the large touchscreen display at the front of the room. With surprising confidence, she pulled up the company's financial flowcharts and began tracing the patterns of fraudulent transactions, explaining in her clear child's voice how money had been siphoned through multiple channels. See here? These transfers all happen on the 15th of each month, exactly 3 hours after normal vendor payments. And here, these shell companies all have names that are anagrams of Victor Morgan, just rearranged with extra letters. As Emma continued her explanation, the skepticism in the room gradually transformed into astonishment. Even Walter was leaning forward, his bushy eyebrows raised in surprise. The child is right, he admitted grudgingly. I've been reviewing financial statements for 40 years, and I miss these patterns completely. The steel-haired woman Diane Forrester, chairwoman of the board, turned to Richard. What does this mean for the company moving forward? The press is having a field day with Eleanor's arrest. Our stock has taken a significant hit. Richard nodded to Catherine, who stepped forward professionally. We've prepared a 3-phase recovery plan, she explained, bringing up a new display. Phase 1 involves complete transparency about the fraud and the recovery of funds. Phase 2 focuses on restructuring our financial oversight systems to prevent similar vulnerabilities. And Phase 3 introduces our new Financial Intelligence Division, which will implement enhanced security protocols across all departments. Emma watched her mother with pride, remembering the nights Catherine had spent teaching her about financial models while preparing her own presentations for work. Now those same skills were being used to save the company that had once discarded her. And where does the child fit into this plan? Walter asked, his tone slightly less dismissive now. Richard smiled. Emma has a unique perspective that has already proven invaluable. She'll be consulting with the Financial Intelligence Division on an advisory basis, with appropriate compensation directed to her college fund. You want to put an 8-year-old on the payroll? Another board member asked incredulously. Age is just a number, Emma interjected before Richard could respond. Like all the other numbers in your reports, what matters is if they make sense together. A moment of surprised silence followed. Then Diane Forrester laughed, a genuine sound of delight that broke the tension in the room. The child has a point, she acknowledged. Richard, I believe you found quite the prodigy. As the meeting continued, Emma's attention was drawn to a man seated halfway down the table who had remained silent throughout the proceedings. Unlike the others, he hadn't watched her presentation with surprise or skepticism, but with calculated assessment. There was something in his gaze that made Emma instinctively uneasy. When the meeting broke for a brief recess, Emma tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Who's that man?" she whispered, discreetly indicating the silent board member. Catherine glanced over. "That's Robert Caldwell. He joined the board about a year ago. He represents some of our largest investors." Emma frowned. "He looks at me funny." Catherine's protective instincts immediately sharpened. "Funny how?" "Like I'm a math problem he's trying to solve," Emma explained. Before Catherine could respond, Samantha Reed, their security detail, approached. "Mrs. Johnson, there's a situation with Liam. The childcare staff sent for you." Concern flashed across Catherine's face. "Is he all right?" "Just fussy," they said. "Probably hungry." Catherine hesitated, torn between her professional duties and maternal concerns. "Go," Richard encouraged. "We'll continue the financial projections when you return." Catherine nodded gratefully. "Emma, come with me." "Actually," Richard interjected, "we could use Emma's insight on the next section. It deals with the pattern recognition protocols she helped design. Would you mind if she stays, Catherine?" Catherine glanced at her daughter, who nodded eagerly. "I want to help, Mom." "All right," Catherine agreed reluctantly. "I'll be back as quickly as possible." She turned to Samantha. "You'll stay with Emma?" The security specialist nodded firmly. "Right beside her the entire time." As Catherine left, Emma returned to her seat near Richard. The board members began discussing technical aspects of the financial recovery plan, but Emma's attention kept drifting to Robert Caldwell, who was now typing something on his tablet, his expression unreadable. When the discussion turned to the new security protocols, Richard invited Emma to explain the pattern recognition system she had envisioned. "It's like teaching a computer to see pictures in the numbers," Emma explained, approaching the display again. "Financial transactions follow patterns like animal migrations. When something moves against the pattern, the system flags it for human review." "Impressive," Diane Forrester commented after Emma's explanation of the pattern recognition system. "And this was your idea?" Emma nodded. "Mum taught me about patterns in data. I just thought about how to find the weird ones automatically." And how would this system have detected the fraud? Robert Caldwell spoke for the first time, his voice coolly analytical. It would have flagged the duplicate signatures immediately, and the shell companies would have been identified by their naming patterns, Emma replied confidently. A subtle tension filled the room as Caldwell and Emma locked eyes across the table. The moment was broken when Catherine returned with Liam, now contentedly drinking from a bottle. When the board finally voted to approve the recovery plan, Richard concluded the meeting with renewed confidence. As the board members filed out, most stopped to congratulate Catherine and express amazement at Emma's abilities. Only Caldwell left without a word, his calculated gaze lingering on Emma until the elevator doors closed behind him. "You did wonderfully," Richard told Emma. "You have a natural gift for explaining complex concepts." Emma smiled, but couldn't shake her unease about Caldwell. "Mr. Goldstein, why was Mr. Caldwell so interested in me?" Richard's expression flickered slightly. "Robert represents some powerful investment groups. He's always looking for competitive advantages." "He didn't seem happy that I found the fraud," Emma observed. "Some people are uncomfortable when their assumptions are challenged," Catherine explained carefully, "especially by someone they didn't expect." As they prepared to leave, Richard's assistant rushed in, her expression troubled. "Mr. Goldstein, the FBI just called. They need to speak with you immediately." Richard excused himself, returning minutes later with a grim face. "What's wrong?" Catherine asked, immediately sensing trouble. "Victor Morgan has escaped federal custody," he said quietly, "and the FBI believes he had inside help." Catherine instinctively pulled Liam closer. "How is that possible? He was under federal guard." "The details aren't clear yet," Richard replied, "but his transport was ambushed en route to the detention center. 2 agents were injured." "And Eleanor?" Catherine asked. "Still in custody, but under increased security." Emma, listening intently, spoke up. "He'll come back for the money, won't he?" The adults fell silent, struck by the child's intuitive grasp of the situation. "The accounts are frozen," Richard said finally. "He can't access them." "But he knows who stopped him," Emma persisted, her young face serious. "He knows who found his secret." Catherine paled at the implication. "Richard, my children, your security detail will be doubled immediately," Richard assured her, "and I've arranged for you to move to a secure apartment in the building until Morgan is recaptured." 3 days later, Emma sat at her small desk in the corner of Catherine's new office, working on what she called her pattern project. Using the tablet Richard had given her, she was developing a simple algorithm to detect anomalies in financial data. Liam napped peacefully in his crib nearby, while Catherine was in a meeting 2 floors down. Samantha Reed, their security detail, stood by the door, her alert presence a constant reminder of the threat still hanging over them. A knock at the door drew Samantha's immediate attention. She checked the security feed before opening it to admit Jennifer Hayes. "How's our young financial genius today?" Jennifer asked cheerfully, setting down a box of colorful donuts. Emma's face lit up. "Are those from Stan's?" "Only the best for the girl who saved the company," Jennifer confirmed. As Emma selected a chocolate-frosted donut, Jennifer lowered her voice to speak with Samantha. "Any updates on Morgan?" Samantha shook her head slightly. "Nothing concrete. The FBI tracked him to Detroit yesterday, but the trail went cold." Their conversation was interrupted when Emma called out, "Jennifer, look at this." The women approached Emma's desk, where she had created a simple flowchart on her tablet. "What am I looking at, sweetie?" Jennifer asked. "I was thinking about Mr. Caldwell," Emma explained. "He joined the board 11 months ago, right after Goldstein Innovations announced the new medical technology division, and he represents a company called Meridian Ventures." "That's right," Jennifer confirmed. "They're one of our largest investors." Emma nodded. "So I looked up Meridian Ventures. Their CEO is James Blackwood, who used to work with Victor Morgan at Morgan Medical Solutions 15 years ago. Jennifer's eyes widened. Emma, how did you find this out? Google, Emma replied simply. Plus the company history book in Mr. Goldstein's waiting room. Samantha and Jennifer exchanged glances, both impressed and concerned by the child's investigative skills. Emma, this is very interesting, Jennifer said carefully, but we shouldn't jump to conclusions. Business connections aren't unusual in specific industries. I know, Emma agreed, but Mom always says coincidences are lazy explanations. Before the adults could respond, Samantha's phone buzzed with a message. Her expression remained professional, but Emma noticed a subtle tension in her posture. What's wrong? Emma asked immediately. Nothing to worry about, Samantha assured her, though her eyes told a different story. Jennifer, could I speak with you outside for a moment? As the women stepped into the hallway, Emma slipped off her chair and moved silently to the door, pressing her ear against it. Security breach in the building system, Samantha was saying. Someone accessed the residential floor plans from an external server. Morgan? Jennifer asked, her voice tight with concern. Possibly. We're implementing additional measures, but I want Mrs. Johnson and the children moved to a different location as a precaution. Emma retreated quickly as the door began to open, returning to her desk just as the women re-entered. She pretended to be absorbed in her tablet, but her mind was racing with what she'd overheard. Victor Morgan was coming for them, and he might have help from inside the company. Emma, we're just going to stay somewhere different tonight, Catherine explained as she packed a small overnight bag. It's only a precaution. Emma nodded, helping to gather Liam's bottles and formula. Because Mr. Morgan might know about this apartment now. Catherine paused. You overheard Samantha and Jennifer, didn't you? A little, Emma admitted. Is Mr. Morgan going to try to hurt us? Catherine knelt down, taking Emma's hands in hers. No one is going to hurt you or Liam. I promise. We have very good people protecting us. Samantha entered from the hallway. The car is ready, Mrs. Johnson. We'll take the service elevator to avoid the main lobby. Catherine lifted Liam from his bouncer, securing him in his carrier, while Emma shouldered her small backpack. The service elevator descended directly to the underground parking garage, where a black SUV with tinted windows awaited them. Two security officers stood beside it, their professional demeanor not quite concealing the weapons beneath their jackets. As they approached the vehicle, Emma suddenly stopped. Wait, we can't leave yet. Emma, we need to go, Catherine urged. But my patent project, Emma insisted. It's important. I left the tablet in Mom's office. Samantha shook her head firmly. We can't go back upstairs, Emma. It's not secure. But it has information about Mr. Caldwell and Meridian Ventures, Emma persisted. I think they might be connected to Mr. Morgan. The security team exchanged glances. What kind of information? One of them asked. Financial connections, Emma explained. Mr. Caldwell represents Meridian Ventures, and their CEO used to work with Mr. Morgan, and they invested in Goldstein Innovations right before the fraud started. Catherine looked alarmed. Emma, why didn't you tell me about this? I just figured it out today, Emma said. It's all on the tablet. After a brief discussion, they decided to return to Catherine's office to retrieve the tablet. The executive floor was quiet, most employees having left for the day. When they reached the office, Emma hurried to her desk. It's not here, she said, confusion and alarm in her voice. The tablet is gone. Catherine set Liam's carrier down and helped Emma search. Are you sure you left it here? Positive, Emma insisted. I was working on it when Jennifer brought donuts. Samantha's expression darkened. Someone took it. We need to leave now. As they turned to go, the office phone rang, startling everyone. After 3 rings, Catherine answered, Hello? Emma watched her mother's face pale as she listened to the caller. "Yes, she's with me," Catherine said, her voice steady despite her evident fear. "I understand. We'll be there." She hung up and turned to Samantha. "That was Robert Caldwell. He has Emma's tablet. He wants to meet us in the boardroom. Now." The boardroom was dimly lit when they arrived, the floor-to-ceiling windows revealing Chicago's nighttime skyline. Robert Caldwell sat alone at the massive table, Emma's tablet in front of him. "Mrs. Johnson," he acknowledged as they entered. "Emma, thank you for coming." Samantha positioned herself between her charges and Caldwell. "Mr. Caldwell, explain yourself. Taking a child's property and making demands is completely unacceptable." Caldwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I didn't take anything. The tablet was brought to me by IT Security, who found it contained unauthorized research into board members and investors. My daughter was working on a pattern recognition project," Catherine said firmly. "Yes, I saw that." Caldwell tapped the tablet. "Quite impressive work for an 8-year-old, especially her insights into Meridian Ventures and its connections to Victor Morgan." Emma stepped forward, unintimidated. "Are you working with Mr. Morgan?" A flicker of surprise crossed Caldwell's face before he laughed. "No, Emma, I am not working with Victor Morgan. Quite the opposite." "Then why did you take my tablet?" Emma challenged. "Because you were getting dangerously close to sensitive information," Caldwell replied. "Information that could put you and your mother at even greater risk." Catherine moved to stand beside her daughter. "What information?" Caldwell hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Meridian Ventures isn't just an investment firm. It's a front for a federal task force that's been investigating Victor Morgan for years. Financial fraud is only part of his operation." Samantha's posture shifted subtly. "You're with the government?" "Not exactly," Caldwell replied. "I'm a private contractor working with several agencies. My placement on Goldstein's board was part of an operation to gather evidence against Morgan's network." "And Eleanor Goldstein?" Catherine asked. "A surprise to us as well," Caldwell admitted. "We knew Morgan had an inside connection at Goldstein Innovations, but we didn't know it was the CEO's wife until your daughter exposed the fraud." Emma studied Caldwell with the intense concentration that had become her hallmark. "If you're the good guys, why did you look angry when I found the fraud?" "Because you exposed Morgan before we could identify all his associates," Caldwell explained. "We were close to uncovering his entire network when you forced his hand." "So now he's free and we're in danger," Catherine summarized, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Yes," Caldwell acknowledged, "but we can protect you if you'll help us." "Help you how?" Catherine asked suspiciously. "Morgan will be at tomorrow's investor meeting," Caldwell revealed. "Not in person, but watching through an associate. We believe he plans to make a move to access emergency funds that weren't frozen. And you want to use my children as bait," Catherine concluded coldly. "Absolutely not. Not bait," Caldwell corrected quickly. "But Emma's presence would ensure his associate attends. They need to assess the threat she poses to their operation." "Mom," Emma said quietly, "I want to help." Catherine looked down at her daughter, seeing the determination in her young face. "Emma, this isn't like finding patterns in financial data. These are dangerous people." "I know," Emma said solemnly, "but Mr. Morgan took your job and almost made us homeless. He made Liam go hungry. And now he's trying to scare us." "We would have multiple layers of security," Caldwell assured Catherine. "Emma would never be in actual danger." Catherine looked from her daughter to Liam, sleeping peacefully in his carrier. "If we agree to this," she said finally, "I want complete control. Any sign of trouble and we leave immediately. Non-negotiable." Caldwell nodded. "Agreed." As they left the boardroom, Emma tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mom, I still don't trust Mr. Caldwell. Catherine nodded, drawing her daughter closer. Neither do I, sweetheart. Neither do I. The annual investor meeting of Goldstein Innovations was filled with shareholders, financial analysts, and business reporters, all eager to hear how the company would recover from the embezzlement scandal. Behind the stage, Catherine reviewed her presentation while Emma sat nearby, dressed in a simple blue dress. Liam had been left at the secure location with trusted security officers, a separation that had clearly troubled Catherine but was deemed necessary for the operation. Remember, Samantha instructed Emma, you'll sit in the front row with Agent Davis. Stay beside him at all times. If anything feels wrong, tell him immediately. Emma nodded solemnly. I understand. Caldwell entered. We've identified 27 attendees with potential connections to Morgan. Facial recognition is running on all security feeds. Richard Goldstein joined them, his presence commanding despite the strain of recent days. Catherine, are you ready? The shareholders are getting restless. Catherine nodded, closing her presentation folder. As ready as I'll ever be. Richard knelt to Emma's level. Thank you for helping us again, Emma. You're the bravest person I know. Emma managed a small smile. Braver than the monster hunters in my books? Richard laughed, a genuine sound that momentarily lightened the tension. Much braver. They only fight, pretend monsters. As Richard and Catherine prepared to take the stage, Emma was escorted to her seat in the front row beside Agent Davis, disguised as a company executive. The auditorium lights dimmed, focusing attention on the stage where Richard began his address to the shareholders. Emma scanned the audience as she'd been instructed, looking for anyone who seemed too interested in her. On stage, Catherine was presenting the company's financial recovery plan, explaining the pattern recognition system they'd developed based on Emma's concept. As Catherine continued, Emma noticed a woman in the third row who kept shifting her attention between the stage and Emma herself. She wore business attire like most attendees, but something about her seemed off. Emma leaned closer to Agent Davis. Third row, 5 seats from the left. Dark hair, blue jacket. She keeps looking at me. Davis tapped something on his phone. Moments later, Caldwell checked his device. The presentation continued until the Q&A session, when the woman Emma had identified raised her hand. Lisa Chen, Westridge Investments, she introduced herself when called upon. Your pattern recognition system sounds impressive, but couldn't it be circumvented? After all, if a child could identify the previous fraud. Her gaze shifted pointedly to Emma. Catherine's smile remained professional. While no system is completely foolproof, ours uses adaptive learning. And as for my daughter's insights, sometimes the most unexpected perspectives reveal what experts miss. As the Q&A ended and the audience began to rise, Davis put a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. Stay close, we're moving you out now. But before they could leave, the woman in the blue jacket approached. Excuse me, you must be the famous Emma Johnson. I'm Lisa Chen. Davis stepped slightly forward. I'm sorry, but we need to go. And the woman's smile tightened. Of course, I just wanted to give Emma my card. She held out a business card. As Emma hesitated, Caldwell appeared beside them. Ms. Chen, I believe you're already acquainted with Victor Morgan, or should I say, you work for him. The woman's expression changed in an instant, her hand moving toward her purse. Before she could reach it, 2 plainclothes agents seized her arms. Lisa Chen, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and accessory to escape, Caldwell announced quietly. As they led her away, Emma noticed the woman's cold glare fixed on her, a look of hatred that sent a chill down her spine. 1 week later, Emma sat on a comfortable couch in Richard Goldstein's private office, working on advanced mathematics problems. Catherine entered with Liam, now almost a month old and growing noticeably. How's the math coming along? She asked. settling beside Emma. "It's too easy," Emma replied. "Dr. Williams said these were high school problems, but I finished them in 20 minutes. The door opened and Richard entered with Caldwell and Agent Davis. Their expressions told Emma they had news before they spoke a word. "We got him," Richard announced. "Victor Morgan was apprehended in Toronto an hour ago." Relief washed over Catherine's face. "It's over? Really over? Really over," Davis confirmed. "Between the evidence from Lisa Chen's devices and Eleanor Goldstein's cooperation, we have enough to put Morgan away for decades." Emma studied the adults' faces. "But you don't look happy," she observed. Caldwell exchanged glances with Richard. "We're very happy about Morgan's arrest. But there's something else we need to discuss with you and your mother." Catherine instinctively pulled Liam closer. "What now?" Richard took a seat across from them. "It's about Emma's future. Her abilities are exceptional. The pattern recognition skills she demonstrated are beyond anything I've seen in 40 years of business." "We've had inquiries," Caldwell added, "from educational institutions, research facilities, even government agencies." Catherine's expression hardened. "My daughter is 8 years old. She's not a laboratory specimen or a government asset." "Of course not," Richard agreed quickly, "but she deserves opportunities that match her gifts." Emma looked up from her math book. "What kind of opportunities?" "Special educational programs," Richard explained. "Access to resources most children never see." "And in exchange?" Catherine asked skeptically. "Nothing," Richard insisted. "This isn't a transaction, Catherine. It's recognition of something extraordinary." Emma closed her book. "I want to stay with Mom and Liam." "You would, sweetheart," Catherine assured her. "No one is suggesting otherwise." Caldwell cleared his throat. "Actually, some of the programs would require residential enrollment. The most advanced ones." Catherine's answer was immediate. "Absolutely not. Emma stays with her family." Richard studied them thoughtfully. "What if we created something new? A program here at Goldstein Innovations, tailored specifically for Emma, with the best educators and resources, but no separation from her family." "And no government involvement," Catherine added firmly. "I can work with that," Caldwell conceded. Emma had been quiet, thinking. Could other kids join too? Kids who are good with patterns but don't have opportunities? Richard blinked, surprised by the question. "I suppose they could. A scholarship program, perhaps?" Emma nodded. "Then it's not just about me. That feels better." "Mom," she said suddenly, "remember when Dad left, and you said sometimes the worst things lead to the best things if you're brave enough to keep going?" Catherine's eyes softened. "I remember, sweetheart." "You were right," Emma said simply, reaching out to touch Liam's tiny hand. The baby grasped her finger with surprising strength. Richard watched this interaction with warmth. "Emma, I never properly thanked you for saving my company." Emma looked up, her expression serious beyond her years. "You did thank me. You gave Liam his milk and Mum her job back. That was the easy part," Richard admitted. "The harder part is making sure what you did changes things permanently, not just for your family, but for every family connected to Goldstein Innovations." Emma considered this. "You mean like not firing people too quickly when there are problems?" The directness of her question made Richard wince slightly. "Exactly like that. I made mistakes, Emma. I forgot that companies are made of people, not just numbers." "Numbers are important," Emma said, the financial prodigy speaking. "But people are more important," she added, the child in her affirming what truly mattered. As the meeting concluded, Catherine pulled her daughter into a hug. Liam nestled between them. "You know what makes you special, Emma?" she whispered. "It's not just your brilliant mind. It's your heart." Emma smiled, content in her mother's embrace. "Hearts make patterns too, Mum. The most important